Hey everybody, it's Candy, aka Brown Eyed Girl 69. I'm back to read that chapter 3 of Mr. Whoop and Me. The title of this chapter is called Doc Fletcher. It's a pretty short chapter, actually. The streetlights were just blinking on as Mr. Whoop and I finally reached the common. My heart sank. If it was 6 o'clock already, Doc Fletcher would probably be long gone from his office. And not that I could do anything about it right then, but Mom would be watching the windows with fire in her eyes. Mom likes to think of herself as a person of great courage, and she is about most things. But when she gets scared, like when Dad or I get sick, or if she is afraid something has happened to us, she gets mad at us for scaring her. It's worth her life to get really sick around her, because she will bite your head off before the disease gets you. Even though the office lights were off, I took Mr. Wolf over to Doc Fletcher's building anyway. Sure enough, there was a room still lit at the back, and I could see a figure moving around inside. If there were any sick animals staying at the kennel at the back, maybe the right night person was there too, and would be able to help Mr. Wolf some way. I rapped on the door for a long time before I got any response. Then, to my immense relief, I could see it was Doc Fletcher himself coming through the dark waiting room to unlock the door. He only opened it a crack at first. "I'm closed for the night, Miles. Come in early morning." "You gotta look at Mr. Wolf right away," I pleaded. "He's really hurt." He hesitated a minute before widening the crack. "I wouldn't even be here except that my night helper is a little late. I've got to leave on a call out north of town as soon as he comes." "Just look at him," I pleaded. "He got into a terrible fight, and he's bled a whole lot." He opened the door all the way and peered down at Mr. Wolf. "Well, in that case..." As he spoke, he took a hold of Mr. Wolf's collar and led him toward the light. "Good Lord," he cried when he got a good look at him. "He really did get torn up. I hope the other dog has had his rabies shot on schedule." "It wasn't a dog," I explained, squatting beside Mr. Wolf to steady him with my hands. "It was a great big groundhog out on Pin Hill." "A groundhog?" Doc Fletcher turned to me with amazement. "I've heard of them giving a big fight, but this is incredible. He must have been one mad varmint to tackle a dog this size." "Easy there, fellow," he coaxed. Mr. Wolf whimpered once or twice while the doctor cleaned his wounds with some solution that made the inside of my head tingle. Then he slipped a hypodermic in beside the worst torn place on the dog's neck and rubbed the needle site a minute with the flat of his thumb. I held Mr. Wolf still, but I didn't look again for a while. I heard the sound of the back door opening just as Doc finished tying off the last stitch in Mr. Wolf's neck. Then Doc looked up at me with a reassuring smile. "How's that for timing? That will be Ed's coming to relieve me when I've done all I can for this fellow for a while." He washed his hands and then handed me a small brown envelope. "Give him one of these twice a day. They'll help fight off infection." "How big did you say that groundhog was again?" When I held out my hands to show him, he whistled softly. "He must have been a fight, that fella." "They both were," I told him, and I got really scared. Mr. Wolf had collapsed on the floor and was staring up at me with that betrayed look he'd always gets when I let someone do something unpleasant to him. Doc Fletcher frowned a little as he looked down at him. "It sure would be better if you didn't make him walk home. I could drop you off except for this call to north of town. Is your dad home this week?" I shook my head. "Not until tomorrow night, but if you'll let me use your phone, Mom will come after us." "No problem there," he said, pulling his leather jacket off the hook. "Ed will let you out when you're through, and let me see those stitches in about a week." Mom's voice was pretty shrill when she answered the phone, but when I told her where I was, she settled down a little. When I told her about the fight on the way home, she sighed. "Poor old fellow," she said thoughtfully. "He has probably been guarding that clearing all his life. It's too bad the two of them had to tangle." I hated it when I had to hit him, I told her, knowing she would understand how I felt. I never killed anything warm like that before. She didn't say anything, but I saw her nod in the darkness. Mr. Wolf was getting stiffer by the minute. It took both of us to help him out of the car. Not that anything could be done about it, but your dinner is probably past saving, she said as she closed the door behind us. Since it's Thursday, it probably wasn't worth saving, I replied. That's kind of a private joke between Mom and me. With Dad on the road all week, Mom and I get down to pretty simple meals compared to the spreads that she cooks up on the weekends. She giggled the way that reminds me that she must have been 13 once herself. Leftovers tonight mean Dad's home tomorrow, she said. I guess he won't be calling in tonight, I said, feeling a little wistful about that. By the time Dad comes, Mr. Wolf will be on the way to his old self, she said with assurance. So, Mr. Wolf got in a fight with that groundhog. Groundhog tore him up pretty bad. But Miles and Mr. Wolf made it to Doc Fletcher's in time. And Doc Fletcher fixed up Mr. Wolf as much as he could, and all they could do is hope for the best. So that was the end of that chapter. The next chapter is going to be, let's see, Sheriff Craven's. And then here's a picture of Mr. Wolf and Miles and Doc Fletcher. How cute. I like these drawings. They're just so good. They bring life to the story. You know what I mean? Anyways, until next time, YouTube, y'all have a most wonderful, blessed evening.